All right, parents. Well, now it's time for us to take everything we've been learning this week about James chapter 4 and the issue of pride and turn that into a discussion that we can have with our kids. You know, the word pride appears about 50 times in the Bible, and it's never good. It's never a positive thing. Pride is something that we want to help our kids avoid. James chapter 4, verse 16 says, "But now you are proud, and you brag. All of this bragging is wrong." And Proverbs 16:18 says that pride leads to destruction. A proud attitude brings ruin. So it might be helpful to review a couple of verses with your kids about pride, but it might also be helpful to give them a simple definition. A simple definition of pride might be an excessively high opinion of yourself or your accomplishments, or simply a feeling of superiority to others. Now, if we ask our kids, "Are you proud, or do you demonstrate pride?" they might not be sure, or they would say no. But there are behaviors that our kids demonstrate that actually are rooted in pride. So maybe see if you recognize some of these behaviors in your kids. Arrogance is one of those attitudes that's rooted in pride. It's a belief that it really is all about me. It's a very self-centered attitude. Sulking, giving somebody the silent treatment, or pouting, the idea that if I don't get what I want, I can treat you badly. Disrespect is rooted in pride. It can be the tone or the words that our kids use, but basically they're assuming the same level of authority as a parent or another adult. In fact, you might have your kids say, "You're not the boss of me." Well, we are the boss. Bossiness is also rooted in pride. Telling other kids what to do or telling parents what to do. Also showing off, wanting or needing to always be the center of attention. Now, here's how I would suggest talking about this with your kids this week. You may want to mention some of the verses that we started with, sort of the consequences of pride. But I think this is one of those cases where you actually need to spend more time talking about the opposite of pride. Instead of focusing on the evils of pride, focus on the virtues of honesty, gratitude, and humility. So you may want to start your discussion by looking at some verses. James chapter 4, verse 10 says, "Humble yourselves in the Lord's presence, and he will honor you." Proverbs 18:12, "Proud people will be ruined, but the humble will be honored." So again, let's lift up the virtues of being humble or humility. And here's some ways that we can encourage humility at home. First is just to teach our kids to be servants. Jesus repeatedly taught this lesson to his disciples. In Mark chapter 9, verse 35, Jesus sat down and called the 12 apostles to him. He said, "Whoever wants to be the most important must be last of all and servant of all." And there's no such thing as an arrogant servant. A servant is humble by definition. If our kids learn to see themselves as servants of God and servants of others, they'll naturally develop an attitude of humility. We can also encourage our kids to admit their mistakes. You can't be a person of humility if you can't admit being wrong. Our kids need to see that people think more of them, not less of them, when they admit mistakes. Now, one way to encourage kids to admit mistakes is by showing mercy when they confess their sins or their errors. Tell them over and over again that when they fail or when they sin, that they can always be forgiven and accepted. Kids who feel that they have the ability to safely go to their parents when they make a mistake are more likely to be honest and, again, humble. Now, another way to encourage our kids to admit mistakes is to set that example by admitting our own mistakes. Now, some parents feel like they need to keep up a false front of maybe perfection in front of their kids. They may feel like admitting mistakes would diminish them in their children's eyes. In reality, when we as parents say to our kids, "I was wrong, please forgive me," we're actually honored or magnified in their eyes. And we teach them about humility at the same time. A third thing that we can do is teach our kids to demonstrate empathy towards others. Now, this is the classic put yourself in someone else's shoes conversation. And while our kids may feel like they hear it 1,000 times, they need to keep hearing it until they're able to apply it. Our kids need to learn awareness of and sensitivity to the feelings of others. It's hard for kids to learn, but we just need to keep after it with them. See, humility is ultimately about understanding our right position before God and others. And as we teach our kids about humility and to be able to demonstrate humility, then we're going to help them avoid the issues and the pitfalls of pride. So have a great discussion with your kids this week, and we'll see you next week on the playlist.